Colin and Hilary Guild run 16,000 sheep, beef and deer stock units on Quartz Hill Station near Darfield and 2 wintering properties near Windwhistle. The Guilds began farming Quartz Hill Station 24 years ago when the original family farm was divided in 2.
Quartz Hill is 2,910 hectares. It's in the headwaters of the Selwyn River. Potentially winter wet, with the paddocks have a clay pan and it's all glacial moraine on the paddocks, and that's about 25% of the property. Another 20 to 30% is easier rolling hill country, which has had quite a good top dressing history, and the balance of the property is harder steep hill country up to 1,000 metres with some top dressing. It's a fairly harsh environment. We have several snowfalls a year, we get winter wet, we have very hard frosts, and we have a very strong nor'west wind run, which is a feature of gorge country in Canterbury. My father first saw an opportunity in 1973 and he bought what was then High Peak, which was a very undeveloped property. He saw a lot of potential there and saw an opportunity to set up the 2 brothers there, so we farmed it as a family company from 1973 till 1988, at which time we split it in half. The stock policy, we have fine-tuned a bit. We've gone for Perndale sheep. We're getting quite a good level of performance out of them, about 130% lambing, and that's unshepherded on hill country, and we just pretty much leave them alone. They're a good dual-purpose sheep. They suit the country well. The cattle, we've changed from a Hereford base to an Angus base by just using Angus bulls. We were getting a lot of trouble with cancer eye, and that was one of the main drivers of that. But I think Angus genetics are very strong, and it was the other driver for it. We caught the deer off the surrounding hill country, our own property and surrounding hill country, by helicopter, and started deer farming that way. And my father was very encouraging in that because he could see a great opportunity there. And they've just been wonderful animals for us. They're very well suited to the environment and the climate. They're really good in snow. They've long legs and they don't worry too much about a bit of snow. And they're intelligent animals too, and they get to shelter. Like anything though, you have to look after them, particularly the stags, in the winter. But hinds are just a maintenance job, relatively easy to run. But we just love the deer, and they fit our growth curve so very well, especially breeding hinds. We've planted lots of trees, and there's been failures and there's been successes. At Quartz Hill, we're at the upper limit for Pinus radiata, and especially the high GF rating ones, they tend not to like the frost and the snow. So there's now a special hybrid tree I've been using, which is a cross between Pinus attenuata and Pinus radiata, and they're very fast growing and they do very well in our climate, percolate the wind and withstand the climate. And I've been using those extensively, but I've also used a lot of Leyland cypress, and Wellingtonia is another good species that we've had good success with. Spruce is another one, but a lot of these trees are hard to get now because a lot of the nurseries have closed down. We've aligned ourselves with Alliance Cooperative, and I have a close relationship with them, and that means that I sort of turns up to the meetings and I chew their ear if I need to, but I find them very good. So they take our end product for sheep, cattle and deer.
370 mixed age cows, all carved out on this hill country. Angus sort of Hereford cross. We put out a black bull and a few Charolais terminal bulls. They calve about September, October, and then they come down and go to the bull on the paddocks and then back out onto the hill country for the autumn. We'll get about 90 to 92% cows to bull. Well, they've just been weaned. I just weighed them the other day, and they'll now, in the next month, we'll walk them down to the bottom farm, Runoff block, and they'll be wintered down there on kale and fodder beet. And then they'll be onto grass in the spring down there and finished. We've got about 700 breeding hinds. They also carve out on this hill country. They love the tussock and the cover and the scope. We bring them in the autumn and wean them and have an on-farm deer sale. All the terminal ones go. They're a Wapiti cross, and we keep the reds for replacing the velveting herd and the hind herd. Very common breed, the Perndale up here, the hardy. We can have dry summers here. Wet winters, they've got to be able to bounce back from a dry summer. They don't get the best of tucker put in front of them, but we expect them to put on weight and get in lamb. We tailed this year 130% used to ram. Very windy climate here, and we've got these heavy clay soils here, and they can get very wet here in the winter. We've got to get all stock off the paddocks in the winter, so all the stock are on the hill country over those winter months. And the hill country is the first place to clear in the snow, you know. So the snow can lie on these paddocks here for a month or 6 weeks. We've got the station up here, which has got hill country, and then 10 minutes down the road we've got the Runoff farm vale here. It takes all our young stock in the winter, which lightens the load here.
Quartz Hill Station, they have around about 400 cows up there, and once they're weaned they come down here in the end of May, and they winter through on kale and fodder beet as a mixed ration basically throughout the winter, and then I fatten them up. About 60 odd replacement heifers go back up there, and we fatten everything else through to sort of forward store in mid-April. About 5 years ago they used to sell all the lambs up at Quartz Hill in the Rokoa Gorge sale, but the prices 5 years ago went that flash, so we decided to fatten some down here and over the winter time. Since then we've gone ahead from selling all the lambs store to now we finish all our own lambs and the replacement hoggets, and also buy in some lambs to finish off as well if we've got feed available, and that's fitted in quite well. We've changed from having no breeding stock down here. We used to have a few cows and a few hundred ewes and things as well, but they were sort of just in the way at the wrong time of the year basically, sort of pinch of feed, and we weren't able to finish lambs, so we got rid of that sort of sideline and just concentrated on the main line of stock from up at the station, basically just finishing them down here. I've got 22 hectares of Swedes, and they're probably about a 11 to 12 tonne crop, so I just have to basically just work out how many lambs I want to feed over the winter and just keep that many. So I'm just drafting the tops off basically just to, they're all fat, they'll be 18.5 kilos at least I would have thought, and we'll take the rest of them through till the spring, sort of September, October, and hope to get the better prices then. In this paddock here we've got rye corn. We've been using that as a way of just getting rid of the weeds in this area of the farm here. It's quite a dry area, fairly light soils, and we're putting it into lucerne. So we do 2 years of rye corn, and we summer fallow it so we've got moisture for the rye corn to come in, and then in the spring after 2 years we've been planting it in lucerne. The lambs they just do so well on the lucerne, it's not funny. We've had mobs we've drafted the same days, you know, off grass, lucerne and a chicory clover mix, and the lucerne ones by far are ahead of the others on their live weight gain over that time. This is a separate farm, a separate style of farming. It's more intensive down here than the extensiveness of Quartz Hill. So things are done differently down here, of course, but I also get help from Reese and the shepherds in Colin. They come down and help with lamb drafting and with shearing and cattle work in the yards and things like that, just when you need an extra pair of hands, and some tractor work and things like that in the spring and the autumn as well, just to help get the crops in the ground.
This program was made with funding from New Zealand On Air.